Types of receivables. It's important to get these categories down because the journal entries are a little bit different for each type. And you remember journal entries are telling the story of what happened, and each of these types of receivables has a little bit different story. So your accounts receivable, these arise from customer transactions. Okay, these are sales to your customer. You end up, going accounts receivable as a debit and sales revenue or service revenue as the credit. We usually expect to collect accounts receivable within 30 to 60 days. And so these are our accounts receivable. Our notes receivable, notes are a formal legal written document. And they usually will be for longer periods of time than your accounts receivable. And they will generally involve things like interest because they're taking a longer time to collect than the 30 to 60 days. So time, you have the time value of money. So we will have to be computing interest on notes receivable. Okay, the other receivables, these would be non-customer, okay? So these are generally not related to your customers. These could be due from officers of the company, it could be due from employees, it could be a tax refund receivable, something that is coming and you put on the books. So those are your three basic. We're going to do accounts receivable, notes receivable. We don't do too much with the other, but you have to be aware of that. They use the term trade and non-trade receivables. A trade receivable relates to customers. So most of your accounts receivable can also be called trade receivables. Okay, so those would be trade. Your notes receivable will be trade or non-trade depending on who owes you the money. If it is a note receivable from a customer, then it could be a trade note receivable. If it's from anybody else, it would be non-trade. So trade receivables, that refers to whether it has to do with your customers or not. Other receivables are generally going to be non-trade because they don't involve your customers. Okay, so it's important just to get those three categories down before we get into the actual accounting for receivables, which is what we do next.